everyone, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today's video I am so excited about. I feel like it's been like a long time coming. It's been a genre that has taken over my life recently, and it just seems like the perfect time to make a video like this. So today I'm going to be doing a Regency romance recommendations video. This video is actually sponsored by St. Martin's Press. It is inspired by the release of a very exciting upcoming book, and that is the Jane Austen Society. So this video is going to be Regency romance recommendations inspired by my deep love of Jane Austen, much like people's deep love of Jane Austen in this book. So before I jump into the recommendations, I do want to quickly shout out this amazing upcoming release that's coming out May 26th. But this is a story that takes place shortly after World War II and basically follows a group of disparate people coming upon Jane Austen's crumbling estate. They see her legacy basically in danger, and they take it upon themselves to not only save the estate but kind of save her legacy and begin to champion it again. All these people come from exceedingly different backgrounds. There's a movie star, a widow, a young doctor, all coming together, growing together, and basically confronting their own personal hardships impacted both by the war and beyond in this time and place, all of them centering on their love of Jane Austen and saving her legacy and her estate. This is said to be a powerful novel that basically explores the triumphs and tragedies of life, and again, really inspired by Jane Austen and her work. For me personally, Jane Austen was absolutely, has been, still is, fundamental to my life as a reader. I've read all of her novels, but I would say Pride and Prejudice specifically was one of the most profound reading experiences for me. So having a novel so deeply inspired by her work, but really just showing a bunch of different people also impacted by her stories, I just love the idea of it, and the fact that her novels have been a huge part of society for hundreds of years and will continue to persist to be so, because how could you not fall in love with characters like Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy? It's amazing. So I'm really excited to jump into the Regency recommendations, because I love romance, and I love romance in the time of Jane Austen. So without further ado, let's dive right in. But of course, I'll have all of this book information linked down below if you're interested in learning more. So for my recommendations, I have quite a bit of range. I have true romance that definitely errs on the side of steamy. I have YA romance. I even have one singular fantasy novel in here as well. All of them though have truly, of course, romance at its center, as well as a historical time period as a setting. This follows our main character, Annabel Archer, and she essentially acquires a scholarship to study at Oxford. However, there are some stipulations with the scholarship. It's basically funded by the Women's Suffrage Society. She basically is only able to go to Oxford at the whim of her very frustrating family that she's under the care of since her father has passed away. And basically they said, if you make any trouble, we're gonna make you come home and you're just going to be a spinster governess to your cousins and you're just gonna have to deal with it. However, when she travels to Oxford, the Women's Suffrage Society, who funds her scholarship, basically says, to have it, you need to help propel our cause. So in being involved with their cause, they basically have to go up to powerful dukes and earls and try to convince them to bring their issues to like the House of Lords. And in doing this, she stumbles upon a very infuriating man called the Duke of Montgomery, who's cold and sneer, makes her angry at first encounter, which of course means they're absolutely going to fall in love. This is a highly entertaining story of wits between two really interesting and individual characters finding each other and falling in love. It's incredibly sweet. I love the setting, 1879 in England, and I really like the women's suffrage element to this as well. I think it adds an interesting historical lens, as well as I think there's going to be multiple books in this League of Extraordinary Women series, and it's just overall a super fun, really entertaining romance story of two characters that hate each other but love each other at their core, and it's all about the banter, people. If you know Jane Austen novels, it's all about the banter. Next book I have to recommend is truly a Jane Austen Regency romance, and that is Dangerous Alliance. And this is an ostentatious romance because this is a story set in Jane Austen's time period. She's actually a peer writing during our main character's time, and our main character actually is a huge fan of Jane Austen novels and uses them as kind of a blueprint to be able to find her own husband. It follows our main character Vicky, who's kind of very much a free spirit. She loves to just explore her father's estate, and she's not really looking to get married. Unfortunately though, at the beginning of the story, her sister has fled her husband's household due to the fact that he is abusive. And unfortunately during this time, women do not have a lot of rights and also not a lot of options of getting out of marriages, as well as protecting their own estate, because essentially once they get married, the rights of the estate go over to the husband. Therefore, our our main character Vicky has to immediately get a husband to protect their family's estate and also kind of secure her sister's future and future safety. Therefore, she basically turns to Jane Austen novels as the perfect inspiration on how to act and be a lady in society, and also kind of like what to look for in a husband in terms of banter and things like that. This book constantly is like quoting Jane Austen scenarios from various of her books, and it's so great. If you're a fan of Jane Austen, it adds such a nice flavor and flair to this narrative style. It's also a really fast-paced read. It's very dramatic. Lots of wild things happen in this story. I definitely compare it often to a kind of a soap opera, but it's one of those books that will keep you smiling and you'll speed right through it. It has a very sweet and soft romance and is one that I just find to be so endearing and a lot of fun. And the Jane Austen elements throughout this book are definitely like some of the best elements as well, and I really liked it. I read it in like 24 hours, as with most of these books. Next recommendation I have is The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue, and this is actually following a main character of a male perspective. We follow our main character Monty, who's a bit of a rogue and a rake, and he's about to start his grand tour of Europe, basically what gentlemen do. They learn a bunch of stuff, they see a bunch of paintings, they basically party, drink, and gamble, and do all the fun things that gentlemen during this time period can do. However, Monty is a little troubled because he really wants to go on this tour with his best friend, but he's also in love with his best friend. And so begins the ultimate adventure between two best friends turned lovers. It's so sweet. They have such an endearing romantic relationship between these two boys, and seeing them kind of finally express and explore their own feelings for each other was absolutely a great time. It also does have quite a bit of twists and turns. There's some unexpected non-romance elements thrown in here, but I would definitely say the strength of this story is the humor as well as the relationship between the two primary main characters, but there's also a huge cast of side characters that are equally lovable, including Monty's sister, who is asexual and wants to be a pirate. So there's a lot to unpack here, but the time period really shines through, and it will just be a book that will like make your heart so, so happy. Next up, I have to give a shout out to, and that is My Plain Jane. Now this is technically a Jane Eyre retelling, but I would say Jane Eyre, Pride and Prejudice, peers, women in this time period. Jane Eyre might be more gothic inspired, but there's still definitely romance involved, and the time period is great, and this is definitely a fun twist on this story. It's really comedic and it's told kind of directly to the audience, and it also has elements of magic. It's definitely a light retelling of Jane Eyre. There are a lot of twists and changes to it. This book as a story doesn't actually follow the main character Jane Eyre. In fact, it actually follows another character, Charlotte, who's Jane's very good friend and who is on a quest to basically save Jane from her terrible tasted men. Also, Jane's best friend is a ghost and Charlotte travels with a ghost hunter. It's again a really quirky reimagining of a very well-known story that has elements of romance. It really takes the time period and runs with it. It has great atmosphere, and it's overall just like laugh out loud funny. And if you're a fan of these types of classics, I love a spin on them, and this to me is a great version of that, so would highly, highly recommend. Next up is my only fantasy version recommendation with the Regency romance, and that is actually Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare. This is set during Victorian England. This is the first book to her new Last Hours series within the Shadowhunter world. She said that you don't need to read any of the other books within this world to read this. I would agree if you're only interested in this series, though there are many great books that she has written, but this one's set in the Victorian period. I just feel like has some of the best atmosphere. We obviously have this well-established Shadowhunter world, like we know how demon hunters, demon slayers, demons all around work. We've read a lot of books in this time period, but seeing that culture placed in a Victorian setting was fascinating and so well done. The circumstance of society is definitely a very prominent part of this story. The romance, the courting, the strolls in all the parks, even how people are communicating, it's all there, and it adds such great atmosphere and angst between a lot of the characters. And in my opinion, while the Shadowhunter series has great action, I read them for the romance and the angst that Cassandra Clare is able to create between characters, and also the draw and just the anxiety of waiting for them to hopefully be able to be together that's present there. And again, due to the Victorian setting, this definitely has sort of a Regency romance appeal to it, and I just feel like Cassandra Clare really does a wonderful job. There's balls, there's everything you want, plus demons. Like, I love it. I wish more Regency romance also had demons. That would be so cool. The next couple of books I'm gonna recommend are actually part of the same series, and they're all by Tess Adair. This is definitely romance on the steamier side, but still has a lot of that wonderful wit and banter that I personally love, both in Jane Austen novels, but just in any novel in general, and what I really look for when it comes to romance stories. It's the Girl Meets Duke series. The first one is The Duchess Deal, and then The Governess Game, and the last one is The Wallflower Wager. All of them basically follow a different best friend within a friend group falling in love either with a duke or a powerful man in society, whatever. Point is, they are each kind of very different tropes, but they're so heartwarming and mostly just about people coming together and finally allowing themselves to be loved and cared for, both like in a romantic setting, but often in a familial setting as well, letting friends in, letting family in. It's just the sweetest, most romantic stories, and on top of that they are really steamy and incredibly entertaining and not put downable. Each of them again kind of have their own central tropes. The first one, The Duchess Deal, is about a marriage of convenience. Basically a grumpy, war-torn man who doesn't feel like he can be loved with anyone basically says, if you marry me and give me an heir, you can basically be rich and do whatever you want with the rest of your life, and our main character agrees. The second one is called The Governess Game, and it's a reformed rake, basically not wanting to confront or allow anyone in, and he takes in these two young girls into his care, and he needs a governess to help care for them, and all their previous governesses quit because they're a lot to handle. This is both about a family unit coming together, and my favorite, it's so sweet, and also two people falling in love. It's amazing. And the last one, The Wallflower Wager, is the Hufflepuff Slytherin love story we all want. It's about a very sweet countess who really is a spinster and has no particular interest in getting married. She just wants to take care of all the wayward animals that come into her life. Her neighbor is a rich new money man called Mr. Duke. And he basically is looking to sell the house that he bought next to her for a profit. When her family threatens to send her back to the countryside because she's not really involved in society, they work together to basically home all of her animals, like the cows and the goats that she has in her backyard, and also prepare her to re-enter society. All of them are very charming and again play with different Regency romance tropes, but at their center they all have romance, sweetness, love, and comedy and banter at their core. They're very rom-com, and I love every second of it. The very last book I'm gonna recommend is Edenbrooke. This is another really sweet Regency romance tale that for me feels like it has the customs that you would find truly in this time period and within Jane Austen stories in it. It feels the most realistic from how a romance would actually be portrayed, and for that I really enjoyed it. It had a lot of soft urgency. Like the anxiety we were waiting for was like a possible handhold, but the author had us on the edge of our seat for that possible handhold or that eyebrow raise. Like everything was just really wonderfully constructed, and this particular story basically follows our main character who at the beginning of this book is living with her grandmother. She's not very happy there. She missed her childhood estate where she would basically just ride her horse, be in the country and paint. Her mother has passed away and her father has moved to the continent. She has a twin sister that is much more interested in being in town and is a lot more ambitious and wanting to marry well. And on top of that, she's kind of this bright light, and our main character is really okay with taking kind of a backseat to her. At the beginning of the story, her sister invites her to come to this estate for the summer because she is trying to woo the count or duke that owns the estate. The issue is that count slash duke, can't remember his title, falls in love with the wrong sister, and it again is the sweetest, most wonderful story. There's horseback riding, there's balls, there's apple orchard, there's touches of drama, sisterly relationship, just the sweetest little romance that'll just make your heart melt. So that is my last romance recommendation. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and found some new books to check out. I am just beginning my journey with Regency romance, so I'm sure I'll have more of these in the future. But again, be sure to check out the Jane Austen Society when it comes out on May 26th. I'm really excited to pick this up as a Jane Austen lover myself. And big thanks again to St. Martin's Press for sponsoring this video. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you soon with another one soon. Goodbye.